Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 1059 for June 2nd, 2024. Coming up in a few minutes.
For me, whiskey is all about being social, it's all about enjoying things with people, and it's all about appreciating people's company and appreciating the moment.
Dr. Kirstie McCallum is one of the master whiskey makers at White & Mackay, and she joins us this week on WhiskyCast In-Depth from Jura, where she's attending her first Fégile as a member of the Jura team. We'll talk about this year's festival release from Jura, as well as her history in blending whiskey and why blended scotches deserve more respect. I'll also have the What I'm Tasting This Week department, behind the label, and much more. The news is next on this week's WhiskyCast.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
You know, dads aren't the best at dropping hints, so I'll do it on their behalf. Get him Redbreast, the world's most awarded single pot still Irish whiskey. Hint, hint.
Happy Father's Day from Redbreast, proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
Gabriel Cardarella from Jura's here, friends. The U.S. Open Championships coming up in June at Pinehurst's iconic number 2 course. This prestigious event has seen many legendary moments, including one featuring the Jura's 19-year-old Champions Edition. More on that coming up.
Let's get started with the week's news. It's brought to you by the Dalmore. Diageo has won another round in its legal battle over a whiskey bottle that's too similar to its Bulleit bourbon bottles. A federal appeals court has sided with Diageo in its trademark infringement lawsuit against Deutsche Family Wines and Spirits. That follows a 2022 district court ruling that Deutsche's bottles for its Redemption bourbon are too similar to Bulleit's bottles. That ruling led to a ban on the Redemption bottles that has been on hold during the appeals process. It's not known whether Deutsch will appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Lots of new whiskeys to talk about this week. We'll start with the latest release from Barrel Craft Spirits, batch number 36 of Barrel Bourbon. This batch brings some changes, as Barrel's Trip Stimson explains.
There's a couple of things going on here. One, I'll tell you what's in it. It's a blend of straight bourbons from Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee. We've got ages that are 7.5 or so, 8 years, 9 years, 10, and a little bit of 15-year-old bourbon in this batch. We have a derived mash bill, which is something that we started doing here recently. When you put blends together, it's not as easy as it is to just put a mash bill on there, right? So we've started doing what we call a derived mash bill, which is where we take the volume of the included liquid and do a calculation so that we can provide what the mash bill would be in the bottle. And so we call it a derived mash bill. And in batch 36, it's 79% corn, 16% rye, 5% malted barley. So we have all of that information on the back of the bottle, the derived mash bill on the back of the bottle, and we've started with a new label in batch 36. So we've kind of given the batches a bit of a facelift, and we're putting the states and the ages now on the front of the label, so that as you're looking at it on the shelf, you're going to see a large number that denotes the batch, and then right next to that, it's going to show you the actual liquid and the age of the liquid that's in that blend.
Seems like you guys are really into transparency.
We do the best we can. I mean, we really try to listen to our consumers and provide as much information as we can about what it is that we're doing.
Batch number 36 will retail for $90 a bottle, and I'll have my tasting notes for it later on. We're starting to see some of the Islay Festival bottlings making their way to retailers. I've already reported on Ardbeg's Spectacular, and Lafroig's annual Kerchis release is on its way off the island now. This year's Kerchis Cask Favorites is a nod to the original 2008 release, which was 10 years old. It'll carry a suggested retail price of $110 a bottle. Meanwhile, Douglas Lang & Company has unveiled its phase yield bottling of Big Pete, its Islay blended malt. The Tropagiac edition is finished in rum casks and will be available in the UK, Europe, and Asia, with a suggested retail price of £65 a bottle. Daft Mill has released a new cask-strength 2010 vintage single malt. It comes from 15 casks filled during the winter and spring of 2010. Just 2,400 bottles will be available at $325 each. Ben Romick has launched the latest edition in its Contrasts range. It's a 10-year-old single malt matured in virgin American oak casks. The unseasoned casks were made by Coopers in Speyside and lightly charred before being filled with Ben Romick New Make. It's available through select whiskey shops in the UK for £60 each. Turning now to Ireland, Bushmills has released the fourth and final edition in its Rare Casks series. It's a U.S.-exclusive 31-year-old single malt that started out for its first 14 years in bourbon barrels and sherry butts before being transferred to new toasted American oak barrels for the final 17 years. Only 780 bottles are available, with a recommended retail price of $2,600 apiece. Teeling Whiskey Company has released the third edition in its Wonders of Wood series of single pot still whiskies. This one is matured in virgin Swedish oak and is a follow-up to the distillery's virgin Chinkopin oak and virgin Portuguese oak editions. It carries a suggested retail price of $100 a bottle. Meanwhile, Sweden's High Coast Distillery has released Alba 2, its unpeated single malt matured in ex-bourbon and new American oak barrels. It's a sequel to the original Alba release and will be available in Sweden and select export markets. There's no word on pricing. And Suntory has unveiled its 2024 limited edition Japanese whiskeys. Hibiki Blossom Harmony is finished in Sakura casks. There's also a Hakushu and Yamazaki Story of the Distillery releases. They'll be available later this month through Decanta and other retailers. And finally, the Dalmore Luminary No. 2 The Rare went on the auction block at Sotheby's Friday. The whiskey is housed in a glass sculpture created by architect Melody Lung. The final bid, including buyer's premium, was £93,750. White & Mackay is donating the $75,000 hammer price to the V&A Dundee Design Museum in Scotland. You can keep up on the latest whiskey news all week long at WhiskyCast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app. The news is brought to you by the Dalmore.
Hello, Richard Patterson here, Master Distiller, Master Blender for the Dalmore. You know, whenever the team and I are in the world sharing our exceptional single malt, we like to keep in touch with Mark Gillespie and the latest news from WhiskyCast.
Let's open up the calendar and see what's happening around the world of whiskey. The Whiskey X Atlanta is this Thursday night. A few seats are still open for Saturday's Bourbon Tasting Spirit School at the Brandy Library in New York City. Julio's Liquors in Westboro, Massachusetts, has a Heaven's Door whiskey tasting on the 14th. That same night is the Whiskey X in Denver, and Waterford Distillery has its annual festival day on June 29th in Waterford, Ireland. If you're organizing a whiskey event, let us know about it. We'll add it to the calendars at WhiskyCast.com and in the WhiskyCast community app.
The U.S. Open Championship has blessed us with some unforgettable moments over the years. A 45-foot birdie putt, followed by a high-five victory lap around the green. Classic. An amateur emerging from the shadows to conquer the field. Legendary. Back-to-back birdies that catapulted a trailing player into champion status. Absolutely thrilling. And then there's that magical moment when you first try the Jura's 19-year-old Champions Edition, released each year to celebrate the tournament. For any true whiskey aficionado, it's a crowd-goes-wild experience. This year's Champions Edition is double-aged and then extra matured in rye casks, delivering a profile as smooth and refined as a par 4 Eagle. You'll savor notes of pear, heather honey, and peppery spice with a dusting of cocoa powder and cinnamon. Seek it out. Watch the U.S. Open from June 13th to 16th and create your own unforgettable moment with the official Scotch whisky of the U.S. Open Championship, Jura's. Please drink responsibly. Copyright 2024, Jura's Blended Scotch Whisky, 46% alcohol by volume.
WhiskyCast In-Depth is brought to you by Lagavulin and the Classic Malts lineup. Dr. Kirstie McCallum joined White & Mackay as a master whiskey maker last year after previous stints at La Martini Quays and Burton Stewart distillers. She's been spending a lot of her time on the Jura portfolio, along with the Dalmore, Fettercairn, and Tamnabulin single malt brands, the Invergordon single grain, and the White & Mackay blends. I caught up with her on Jura the other night, on the eve of the distillery's festival day during the Fay Gilles, on an occasionally wonky Zoom call. We are catching you at the end of a very long day on Jura during the festival day. How was it?
But today we've just been setting up our festival days tomorrow. So we've been setting up the marquees, getting ready for the master classes to make sure everything's in play for going live tomorrow.
How many people do you expect?
Well, we've set up for about 200, so we have a few more intimate master classes tomorrow, so around about 20 per master class. A few of them going on and a few tours, so we'll see how it goes.
What's this year's festival bottling look like?
This year's festival bottling is a 16-year-old bourbon cask. So what we're trying to do is basically showcase the spirit character of Jura. So it's got that lovely sort of peachy note, the stone fruit note, bit of aromatic coming through, and that lovely slight coastal influence. So we still get a little bit of the cask. In some ways, it's almost like a poached pear with hot caramel poured over the top of it. So you've got a bit of caramel coming through, and then you've got the poached pears flavours coming through as well. So it's actually very Moorish.
How is it putting together a blend like this for a special edition compared to putting together the regular Jura blends?
But the regular Jura blends tend to go together in bigger volumes. So this is a single cask release. So it's always a little bit more fun when you get to go through the warehouse, choose casks, and see which ones are your favourites. You get to find all the gems that are hidden in the warehouse.
And drive the warehouse crew crazy, right?
Oh, totally. It's always the one at the bottom of the stove at the very back of the warehouse that you want.
I know Richard used to drive the Jura warehouseman crazy, too, with requests for those barrels hidden away in the back.
Yes, totally.
Let's talk about your past. How'd you get started as a blender in the first place?
Basically, I came into the whiskey industry after leaving university into a temporary position. And I had no intention of staying in the whiskey industry. I did drink whiskey, but I didn't know very much about the whiskey industry. Got a temporary job, and I haven't left ever since. I've been here for 25 years now. Fell in love with it. They found out I had a really good nose and palate, or supposedly I've got a really good nose and palate. And so they trained it up, and I moved into the blending side of things. So I've been a blender now for about 16 years. And Sergio, I'm quite happy to say this. I don't know everything. That's my joy in whiskey, is you're always learning as you go.
So 16 years, what have you learned?
What I would say I've learned is a lot of patience, because you've got to have a lot of patience when it comes to Scotch whisky. I've learned how to appreciate people, and I would say communities and social gatherings, because for me, whiskey is all about being social. It's all about enjoying things with people, and it's all about appreciating people's company and appreciating the moment.
Now I'm about to taste the 14-year-old rum cask version.
Okay.
Tell me about it before I taste it.
It's a 14-year-old, lovely kind of rum flavours coming through it. Is it the rum or the rye you have?
It said rum, but I think you mean rye.
The new 14-year-old to the US.
Or it's a rye finish. Right. It's a 14-year-old rye finish. Basically, it's a Jura that's been matured in bourbon wood and then finished off in American rye casks. So it takes on some of the nice spicy notes that you get from the rye, some of that lovely cereal note, the little bit of the sweetness coming through as well. Then on top of that, you've got those lovely peach apricot notes that you get from the Jura. You've got that little bit of the herbal coming through as well. So slightly green. There's a few green notes in there as well. And then at the back, just this very, very, very gentle hint of almost a brininess.
How did you develop your nose?
Basically sticking my nose into things. For me, people say that you can't teach yourself how to be a blender or how to nose. Yeah, there are some people out there who don't have a sense of smell, as simple as that, or have an issue with their sense of smell. But for me, you can train yourself. It's about smelling things. It's about putting yourself through as many different experiences as you can to get all the different aromas. For me, any whiskey that comes across, you nose it to find out what you think is going on there. It's experience. You build up a library over the years as you develop in the role, and you're always developing that library. You'll come across new things all the time.
Who's the better noser, men or women?
Well, actually, I think there's good nosers on both sides. But they do say sometimes that women have the better nose. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I have heard it said that women have better noses.
I think it's go ahead.
I don't know whether that's 100% true. I'm not going to put my cards on the table or say anything about it, but that's what's out there.
I think there's an anatomical difference there because women have more olfactory glands in the nose.
Ah, there we go. That's me. That. Thank you.
Now, you got responsibility for some of the other whiskeys besides Jura in the portfolio, right?
Yes, I look after all the whiskies, yes.
So you're looking after Tamnavulin and Fettercairn?
Yes,
and of
I
course
am.
the Dalmore too.
The Dalmore and White Mackay. Yeah, the blends too. And Invergordon.
What's the difference between blending for a blended Scotch and blending for a single malt?
Well, you're blending for, I think people underestimate the actual art that goes into blending for a blended Scotch. To me, there's a lot more work goes into putting a blend together because not only have you got to consider the character of the whiskies from the distilleries and and cask types, you have so many different things you've got to bring together. So it's like cooking. It's not all flavours go together. So you'll get some flavours that will batter against each other, some flavours that will mould. So you have to kind of know what whiskies to use to bring what you see as your final vision together. So you can maybe use up to 50, 60 different whiskies in a blend, bringing together all the different characters from the different distilleries to get where you want. And on top of that, you've then got to bring in, do you want dried fruit from the sherry influence? How rich do you want it to be? Do you want to bring in caramel from the bourbon influence? Do you want to bring in vanilla from bourbon influence? Do you want a wine influence in there? So there's a lot of work and a lot of art that goes into making a blended whiskey. With a single malt, you're using the product that is from one distillery. So basically a distillery for ourselves like Dalmore, Tanmavulin and Jura and Fettercairn. The spirit we produce every day, we look after that as well to make sure it's the same every day. We want consistency in our new make spirits. After that, it's about cask selection. So it's a little bit, in some ways, a little bit easier because you're not having to take in all the different characteristics of the whiskies as well, the different whiskies as well. So it's about cask selection and it's about what cask you mature it in, where you're going to finish it, what age is the best age, where you're going to go with this whiskey. So they're very different propositions.
Which do you prefer?
I love them both. I do love them both, but I do like putting a blend together, I have to say. I do enjoy working in blended whiskies because it's amazing by adding 1% of a different whiskey, the difference you can make to the character of a blend. Or by choosing a certain grain whiskey, you might put more body into a blend, or by choosing a certain type of cask, you might put a little bit more sweetness into the blend. So there's all these different characters that you've got to play with. So yeah, I like blending whiskey.
Where do you get your ideas for a blend from?
They can come from a variety of places. They can come from myself if I have a creative idea about what to do or what might be a nice idea for a product. They can come from marketing. If they have I see a spot in the market that they think they can be nice to have a product in this sort of area, they'll come with a brief saying, could you look at a blend that has these characteristics or fits this area of the market? Or it can come just by discussion within a group, just sitting talking and kind of brainstorming ideas.
How often do you collaborate with the rest of the blending team with Greg and Richard?
Every day.
And of
I
course,
work in the
Margaret.
office with Greg every day. Richard a little less often these days because, well, he's kind of semi-retired. But Greg I work with every day.
And of course, Margaret.
And Margaret, yeah, Mags is there every day. Yeah. Actually, the place could run without Mags, so doesn't mean what she does. So, yeah, I work with Mags every day.
Tell me about the collaboration between you on the team.
We've all got our own strengths. We have two blenders. We have Kirstie Hodge and Joe Ricketts, who are blenders, and they've got very different technical skills. Kirstie's a more scientific background, so she brings a lot of scientific and the technical side of things to the team. Joe is more kind of creative. He's more into flavors and articulating things like that, and is very good at writing things and language and stuff. So he brings that side into the equation. You then get Greg, and Greg has his own creative processes as well. So he'll bring the way he creates things. He's very much into like Scottish oak, seems to be is a big driver for Greg. So he'll bring his experience from using different types of oak to the table. I'll bring my experience from different whiskies, and Richard brings his knowledge from 50 years in the industry. That you cannot decry that the amount of knowledge that man has is unbelievable.
Is whiskey blending an art or a science?
It's a mix of both. I think the two go hand in hand. You can use the two to help each other. I don't think one is above the other. I think in some ways it's like putting up a new building. You can make the most creatively beautiful looking building that you can imagine, and you build it, but because you haven't looked at the scientific or the technical specification, the background of it, it might just fall apart. You've got to know that it's technically secure and it's technically been built to the right specification to make sure it's going to stay standing and be beautiful for a long time. So for me, whiskey is the same. You've got to have the technical side of things, and you've also got to have the creative.
I'm hearing somebody in the background.
Yeah.
It's a bit busy around there. Are you having fun?
Having lots of fun, yes. It is very busy. This is the busiest I've seen the island, so yeah, it's very busy.
Do you have a special blend that you make just for yourself?
Not really, no, because there's so many out there. I'm too busy trying everything I can get my hands on. I have my own special flavours that I like and types of whiskies that I like, but I wouldn't say I put anything together specifically for myself.
What are those flavors that you like in a whiskey?
I like a nice bourbon-driven whiskey. I like a whiskey to taste like the distillery. So for me, it's all about providing the character of the spirit. The cask doesn't over-dominate. You've got the nice, the spirit that is the core, that is where the whiskies came from. It's the heart of it. So why would you want to put it into a cask that's going to over-dominate it or hide the character that comes through from that core spirit? So for me, it's about complementing. It's about having that core character of the distillery and the spirit shining through, the art that the guys in the distillation process have put together, letting that shine, but just adding to it, or even sometimes maybe slightly contrasting it, just let the spirit of the distillery shine, and just with that little bit of difference on top of it. They should always complement each other. There should be nothing over dominating. The spirit should be there and the oak. It shouldn't be a competition between the two.
As a blender, how do you feel about chill filtering and caramel coloring?
It doesn't particularly bother me, because for me, it's totally cosmetic. Caramel's added if you had about 30 bottles, say, on a shop shelf and they were all different colours, yes, the whisky enthusiasts among us and the people who know about whisky would understand why that is there. But for some people who are maybe just coming into the category, that might be a little bit more frightening because they see the same product in like 5 different tints across the shelf. So it's much easier for people to see something that's a consistent colour. The percentage we use of caramel in our products is so small, it's almost negligible as a percentage. And it's also not caramel as you think of as you could taste or you'd want to eat caramel. It's actually not the nicest tasting stuff, so you don't want it to come through in your spirit. So it's very, very tiny amounts we use.
And
Chill
the chill
filtration
filter?
as well. It depends on, for me, chill filtration is horses for courses. So yes, it is nice to have single malts at 46.3 or 47% alcohol, unchill filtered, all the natural oils. But there's some people that doesn't suit as well. There's some people who like drinking the whiskey at 40%. So if you want to drink it at 40%, Asia like the whiskey at 40%. If you want to drink it at 40%, you've got to chill filter it if it's a single malt. Otherwise, it's going to look really not very pleasant in the bottle. And again, you've got that cosmetic effect. So it's all about the audiences you're looking at, the people you're trying to reach, what the whiskey's intent is. So that all comes into it when we're putting together products as well.
I'll close this off by not asking you about your favorite whiskey, but which one are you most proud of having made?
You're like, it's like asking me to choose a favourite child. Oh, I would have to say the Bunnahabhain 46-year-old.
That was a classic.
Yeah, that was a stunning dram. Yeah.
What made that one so unique?
What made that one unique was the casks and the maturation. Basically, it was such a soft, it was a refill cask the whiskey had been in, and it was such a soft maturation. The whiskey had just developed over time. There was no big wood flavours in there. It moulded so well together. Those lovely kind of pineapple, tropical fruit notes coming through. You had the caramel. You had very little spice. Tannin was almost non-existent in it. It was just so soft, so subtle. It just shows what a good whiskey refill cask can do to a whiskey. Because for me, everybody goes on about bourbon casks and sherry casks and all this sort of stuff. A good refill can make an absolutely superb whiskey. And this was testimony to that.
Thanks to Dr. Kirstie McCallum for joining us on this week's WhiskyCast In-Depth. It's brought to you by Lagavulin, an award-winning single malt scotch from Islay, world-renowned for its balanced smoky and peaty taste. Discover Lagavulin's full lineup at malts.com. Let's start off the What I'm Tasting This Week department with the new Jura 14-year-old rye cask finish. It's bottled at 40% ABV. The nose has touches of baking spices, honey, brown sugar, and a hint of brine. The taste spicy and thick with clove, allspice, and cinnamon, tree fruits, and a hint of sea salt, and the finish is long with lingering spices and just a hint of brine. I'm scoring the Jura 14-year-old rye cask finish a 93. Next up, let's look at the Barrel Bourbon Batch 36 we heard about during the news. It's bottled at 57.2% ABV. The nose has touches of black cherries, chocolate, a hint of nuts, and subtle spices. The taste is rich and complex, peppery at first with a touch of cinnamon. The spices fade to reveal chocolate, stone fruits, and a hint of cherries. The finish is long with lingering spices and a touch of dried fruits. I'm scoring Barrel Bourbon's batch number 36 a 94. Finally, let's look at a 12-year-old Kalila Oloroso cask finish from Creetown Distillers. It's bottled at 52% ABV. The nose has a subtle peatiness along with touches of figs, dates, heather, and honey. The taste is spicy with chili powder and cinnamon, peat smoke, dates, figs, and red grapes. The finish is long with gentle spices and a lingering hint of peat. I'm scoring the Creetown Distillers Kalila 12-year-old Oloroso cask finish a 92. I'll be adding these whiskeys to our searchable list of tasting notes for 3,700 different whiskeys from all over the world. Check it out this week at WhiskyCast.com.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
A pair of socks, a book, some suspect ties, a compact toolkit. Oh, another book. And a shaving kit. Actually, I could do with that. But anyway, sometimes you've got to take things into your own hands. Go on, treat yourself.
Happy Father's Day from Redbreast, proud sponsor of WhiskyCast.
Let's open up the inbox now and see what people are talking about this week. Our community segment is brought to you by Waterford Whiskey. Juan Cruz has our latest example of skyrocketing whiskey prices. Here's what he posted in the WhiskyCast community app the other day. True story, my wife gave me a bottle of Redbreast 27 for my birthday in 2022. Since we both like it very much, we have been thinking about getting a replacement bottle. Last week I made an inquiry at a very good retailer about availability and price. Got the follow-up call today. It's available for $939 plus tax. Brian Redden responded, "Very sad as to what has happened with pricing on that one. I got my first one for something under $500. Now it's over $700 in Ohio." Juan responded with this, "It is quite ludicrous. A prominent retailer in my area, where I bought the bottle I have, told me today they will not stock it anymore." Here's a primer on suggested retail pricing. Whiskey makers can do only that, suggest a retail price. But wholesalers and retailers can set their own pricing with little or no threat of blowback from the whiskey maker. In some U.S. states, it's actually illegal for a whiskey maker to retaliate against wholesalers or retailers who jack up the price of highly sought-after whiskeys. It's why we see bottles of Van Winkle 10-year-old and 12-year-old Lot B Van Winkle going for $700 or more, when the list price is $70 a bottle. If you have something you'd like to share with whiskey lovers around the world, download the free WhiskyCast community app and join the conversation. It's available in your app store right now. You can also reach us on X, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at WhiskyCast, and the email address is comments@whiskycast.com. Our community segment is presented by Waterford Whiskey, on the web at waterfordwhiskey.com.
That's the sound of our whiskey growing on Dunbell Farm, County Kilkenny. We know where every grain comes from. Only Irish barley, one farm, one terroir at a time. Waterford Whiskey, the most naturally flavoursome single malt.
Let's close out the show now with Behind the Label, our look at the history, science, and people who make whiskey unique. It's brought to you by Balcones Distilling. Pagodas are traditionally linked with Japanese architecture, so why have they become ubiquitous at distilleries all over the world? Blame Charles Doig, the legendary architect of many of Scotland's great distilleries. Back in the day when every distillery had a malting floor and kiln, they needed a chimney to draw the hot air and smoke up through the drying floors. Doig developed what became known as the Doig ventilator. It fulfilled the goal of drawing hot air up through the drying grain while also keeping rain from interrupting the process. These days, pagodas have become so intertwined with distilleries that they're often included in the design of new distilleries that will never have a malting floor or need for a chimney. In fact, local officials rejected the original design for Elixir Distillers' Portentruan distillery on Islay because it was deemed not traditional enough because it didn't have a pagoda. They put one in on the second try and got planning approval for the distillery now under construction near Port Ellen. If you'd like to know more about how a Doig ventilator works, our pal Johnny McCormick has a great article on the subject up now at whiskeyadvocate.com. And if there's something you'd like us to look at on an upcoming episode, just get in touch with us. Behind the Label is brought to you by Balcones Distilling, the original Texas whiskey at the forefront of the American single malt movement, exploring place and provenance with unique style whiskeys, ranging from the award-winning Texas One and Lineage American single malts to their Baby Blue straight corn whiskey and Texas Rye bottled in bond. Discover whiskey from a new perspective at balconesdistilling.com. That's all for this episode of WhiskyCast. You'll find links to the stories in this episode in our show notes at WhiskyCast.com. That's also where you'll find the latest whiskey news, my tasting notes, the calendar of events, the whiskey photo of the week, and of course you'll find a complete archive of past episodes going all the way back to 2005. Get in touch with us on X, Threads, Instagram, and Facebook at WhiskyCast, or you can use the WhiskyCast community app. Download it today from the Apple and Google App Stores. Our email address is comments@whiskycast.com.
Friends, get your bottle of the new Jura's 19-year-old Champions Edition while you can. It's a limited release, so it won't be around forever. Order online at juras.com, and please drink responsibly.
And now, a message from Robin Redbreast.
A thoughtful gift is hard work. What you need is a go-to multi-purpose gift for all occasions. A bottle of Redbreast can say, enjoy every minute, they grow up so fast. Oh. And equally nails, apologies for the back pain, I should have just hired a moving company.
Proud sponsor of WhiskyCast. Redbreast. Pass it on.
WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2024, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.